Welcome, Purdue fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report for today's Purdue Report with Jake Dunn. Literally just Jake Dunn. I was not able to join him because I was working on our high school football sectional previews. By the way, if you're into Central Indiana high school football, go check that out. So Jake previewed the Purdue-Rutgers game by himself. A lot of good information coming up. I'm just going to have him run with it pretty soon, even though part of the reason I started this network was so I could talk Purdue too, so that's probably not a good idea. You can help us out by doing one simple little thing, and that's hitting the like button on this podcast right now. It really does help more than you know. Here's Jake Dunn with the Purdue-Rutgers football preview.
Welcome back, Purdue fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report. I am your host, Jake Dunn, doing a solo episode today. I'll be previewing the Rutgers matchup here for Purdue on Saturday at noon. Be setting the scene, going over what's at stake, breaking down the matchup, going over some keys to victory, and finally giving a prediction at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. No surprise here, Purdue and Rutgers both not having a great season. Both teams are desperate. Purdue sitting at 2-5, 0-4 in the Big Ten, and Rutgers 3-4 overall, also 0-4 in the Big Ten. These two teams have combined for 9 straight losses. So regardless of who wins this game, somebody is going to end their skid this week. It is homecoming for Purdue, so all time at Ross-Ade for homecoming. Purdue is 54, 44, and 4 on homecoming weekend. So Purdue does have a winning record, not by much, but history shows that homecoming is on their side. So I'm gonna need some luck here this weekend for Purdue. Both teams coming off pretty ugly losses. Purdue just had a flat-out bad performance, and flat's a good word to describe kind of how this team came out last Saturday at Northwestern, falling 19-0. Just nothing really to get you excited in that game, and I think Greg and I both turned it off early for that. But Rutgers, you could argue, had a worse game. They played a much better opponent, but they got beat at home for their homecoming. 56-10. So they got beat down by Oregon, who again is much better than Northwestern and certainly much better than Purdue, but should be a close game here on this noon kickoff. Will be broadcasted on the Big Ten Network. Should be sunny in the low 50s, so a pretty perfect fall day for some football. For Purdue, this is the most winnable game left on their schedule before the brutal November stretch that we've talked about, playing at Michigan, at Washington, home against Ohio State, and home against IU. So a pretty tough stretch, all against pretty good teams, including currently the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams in Ohio State and Indiana, respectively. For Rutgers, they're currently sitting at 3-4. It's kind of about bowl survival for them. Probably not going to make a bowl with their current schedule, their remaining schedule, that is. They play Maryland, they still have Ohio State, they still have Illinois, and they also have Penn State as well. Some tough teams there left for them, but if they do want to try to make a bowl game, obviously these are some must-wins for them as well. Emotionally, though, both teams are pretty fragile, and the one that starts out faster is more than likely going to win, especially if they can play a clean game in terms of penalties and turnovers. Breaking down the matchup, let's start with the Rutgers offense against the Purdue defense. Rutgers has a pretty balanced offense, 54th nationally in total offense. They rank 25th in passing and 95th in rushing. Their quarterback, Ethan Kaliakmanis from Minnesota, he's transferred from Minnesota, has quietly been one of the Big Ten's more efficient quarterbacks, sitting at 62% completion rate, 11 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So Purdue has kind of struggled in the past here with Athan, particularly against Minnesota, but also, against efficient quarterbacks like him, like Luke Altmaier, for example. And last week, Preston Stone against Northwestern, he was also pretty efficient. So Purdue's kind of struggled against these types of quarterbacks. So we will see if this somewhat improved pass defense can cause some havoc there. Some of Calais Kamanis' top targets are Ian Strong, who averages 90 yards a game, currently second in the Big Ten for receiving, and KJ Duff, who sits at 6'6", 225 pounds. He's a pretty big red zone threat. In the running game, Antoine Raymond averages 87 yards a game and 9 touchdowns, but Rutgers does only manage 3.5 yards per carry. So this 79th nationally ranked Purdue defense, is going to have a hard time to keeping them in check. As I mentioned, Purdue's pass defense has improved, but they actually moved up 22 spots this past week. But the pass rush still remains pretty invisible. We saw an improvement in the Minnesota game, but again, the Northwestern game just wasn't really a whole lot to write home about, and nothing to get you excited. So any sort of momentum or excitement you think that Purdue might have gotten from the Minnesota game, that all kind of went out the window for most Purdue fans anyway, after the Northwestern game on Saturday. So the key question is going to be, can Purdue's front seven, which is led by Manny Powell, he's currently second in the Big Ten in tackles, can he stop Raymond and the Scarlet Knights' running game and force their quarterback to throw? So it's going to be a big question mark for this game. Let's move on to the offense. Purdue offense versus the Rutgers defense. Quarterback Malachi Singleton likely poised to get his first collegiate start, with Ryan Brown still doubtful with a shoulder injury that he sustained against Northwestern. So Singleton, the Arkansas transfer, certainly adds a running element into the mix here. We saw in the Minnesota game, Purdue was down kind of near in between the midfield and the red zone. Purdue brought him in, ran a few sets with him, and he scored a pretty long touchdown on the ground. So he's got some wheels for sure. He does like to run it, more of a running quarterback, I'd say. But he can sit back in the pass. He had some pretty nice throws that ultimately weren't completed in that Minnesota game as well. But he's likely to get his first start this week. Talk about some of the negatives for Singleton, maybe some of the things that he didn't do so well in that Northwestern game. He did turn it over twice and showed he kind of has a limited pocket awareness. But again, he's the backup, so maybe he's not fully ready to go. But this week he's had a full week with the first team reps, and we should expect a little more of a tailored game plan from the Boilermakers for Singleton. A name that's a little more familiar for us Purdue fans, Devin Mockabee, currently sitting at 2,896 career yards. Can he hit the 3,000-yard mark this game? Purdue is certainly going to need to ride him early and often. This Rutgers defense is statistically pretty dreadful. They are 121st in the nation in total defense, first in pass efficiency, and 107th in rush defense. So a pretty historically bad defense for Greg Schiano's Scarlet Knight team. So it's going to be up to Purdue to really exploit that. Going to be physical in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and that starts here on offense. Oregon, looking at Rutgers' last game, Oregon did put 415 rushing yards on Rutgers' head last week. So if Purdue can play clean football, this matchup certainly would start to lean that way for the Boilers. Taking a look here at special teams, Purdue's Jack McAllister continues to do really well. He averages 47.3 yards per punt, which is second in the Big Ten. Purdue's kicker, Spencer Porath, 9 for 10 this year. Really nice bounce back year so far for Spencer after a pretty rough freshman year for the Brownsburg product. But against Northwestern, some special teams miscues did hurt. Had some poor field positioning and some penalties that were certainly not favorable. And for Rutgers, their kicker, Jai Patel, he's 8 for 12 in field goals this year. Has been really inconsistent, and the Rutgers special teams unit has given up 2 blocks. So Patel's had 2 of his kicks blocked this year. So Purdue can maybe get an edge there on a special teams game. Next, going into penalties and turnovers. Again, it's been a pretty recurring theme here for Purdue, especially lately. Purdue does have a pretty real penalty problem. They currently average 6 penalties a game, including 7 or more in their last 4 games. Against Northwestern, had 98 penalty yards, and defensive PIs, pass interference, and face masks, especially in the Minnesota game, have really kept drives alive, and that's been kind of a recurring theme throughout the season. And the turnover margin, Purdue is minus 11 in the turnover margin, and that ranks 3rd worst nationally. So of every FBS team, Purdue is the 3rd worst in the turnover margin. As the adage goes for turnovers, can't live with them and can't live without them. So you can't turn the ball over on offense, and you need to be generating turnovers on the defense, and that's just something that neither sides of that adage Purdue has been able to really have a lot of success in this year. So especially with this defense, coming in, Barry Odom, being a more defensive-minded coach, you would think that this defense might be a little bit better for that, but not something we've seen so far this year. So if there's ever been a perfect time to turn this around, it's certainly now. All right, so let's move into what Purdue must do to win. Purdue has to start fast. They can't come out slow like they did against Northwestern. They got to come out fired up and ready to go. We've seen Purdue have success kind of early on in some early drives, but in third quarters this season, Purdue has been outscored 53-27. So after halftime, you come out with some adjustments. I really need those to be effective and be able to either extend the lead or catch up to whatever lead Rutgers has established at that point. A big piece of that is winning at the line of scrimmage. Purdue's O-line outweighs Rutgers' D-line by 45 pounds a man, and that's got to translate into push. That goes for both the run game, making those holes for Maccabee to get through, and that's where his nickname Crazy Legs. That's where that comes in handy. Is whenever the line creates those big holes for him to go in, and he can work his magic out in the open field. And on the D line, obviously got to get some pressure there. Purdue struggled with that all season, but with this Rutgers offense, hopefully can generate, can get in the backfield, break through the line, and cause some havoc there for Ethan. Also, kind of going into the line, Purdue's got to protect the football. That starts with protecting Malachi Singleton, giving him plenty of time to make all the proper reads, and then it's on him to make good throws. So with this new QB, his first start at Purdue, avoiding turnovers is going to be the number one priority. On the defensive side, I got to limit the explosive plays. Rutgers can stretch the field, and Purdue's defensive backs, especially if Slusher is out, they got to hold up. So we saw when Tony Grimes was out for Purdue, the secondaries got kind of beat up that week. And if Slusher's out, that's obviously not, he's been the only one to really get many turnovers this year for Purdue. As a strip sack and an interception this year. So he's a big piece of this defense. So if he's out, it's really, next man up mentality, and everybody's got to be playing well against a veteran quarterback like Rutgers has. And as always, got to play clean. Penalties have to be under control. Can't have missed assignments and, be grabbing the receivers, holding. Can't be doing any of that when you get beat. Penalties and missed assignments have really crushed, offensive drives all season. And as we mentioned earlier, extending drives on the defensive end. So got to have execution over flash. So if we can execute all the little things right, Purdue will have give themselves a shot. But if they don't, and they're committing penalties and not doing all the small things, hitting the easy reads, not being able to generate things with line of scrimmage, then this game's going to get out of hand quick, like we've seen before. Looking at some things that could go wrong for Purdue, Malachi Singleton, again, this is going to be his first start. He may have some jitters. We don't know, some first start jitters. So turnovers, installed drives could really, hand Purdue or hand Rutgers some pretty favorable field position. So luckily Purdue has Jack McAllister too. And he's a really good punter, has a really strong leg. He can kind of flip the field, but uh, obviously he can't be on the field if Purdue's turning the ball over. So I really got to make sure turnovers are in check. Struggled with this year. Have a pretty young secondary for the most part, and with some big receivers in Ian Strong and KJ Duff. That is certainly going to be a challenge for this Purdue secondary to keep them in front, not allowing explosive plays and also not creating any penalties like we talked about. And if Slusher's out, we've seen some miscommunication from the secondary. That's really got to be in check too. Whoever's coming in for them, the subs, second string, they really gotta know their assignments, know the plays, and be able to execute once they get out there on the field. Looking at some silver linings here, this Purdue defense, like we talked about, at least in the past game, is quietly improving. You probably wouldn't really guess that after the Northwestern game, but they did jump up 22 spots nationally in both passing yards allowed and pass efficiency defense. Chops Harkless, we are getting him back this week on the D line, so that'll help kind of bolster that room. Home crowd, obviously, going to need a big crowd here for homecoming. Going to need to be rowdy, and got good weather. And Rutgers defense is one of the worst in the nation, so certainly does feel like a breakout game here is possible for this Purdue offense. So I've had a couple, at least the Northwestern game wasn't a really good showing. I certainly saw some good things in the Minnesota game. Ultimately, we know Purdue ended up losing that, but going to need a really good showing from Malachi Singleton and this offense to really tear up this bad Rutgers defense. Looking at the projections here, Vegas does see Rutgers as a slight favorite, currently favored by 1.5 points. The over-under for total points scored in the game is set at 58.5. So Vegas thinks Rutgers has a slight advantage and going to be a lot of points scored here. Some of these computer models certainly call it a toss-up. Some of them, Sarrigan, their model even has Purdue as a favorite by nearly 3 points. So talent gap between these two teams is pretty minimal. They're pretty comparable there. So this game's going to come down to discipline, quarterback play, and special teams. As we've talked about before on this podcast, Purdue's last Big Ten win came over Indiana in 2023. Ending that drought this weekend certainly could kind of reset the tone for Barry Odom and his era here at Purdue. So with basketball season, we're really on the doorstep of basketball season with the exhibition at Kentucky here later today. Really going to need a win to get to kind of keep fans interested and at least be able to carry a little bit of momentum into next year with a pretty rough November stretch coming up here as we talked about earlier. So as Greg and I have talked about before, the honeymoon phase of this hire, of the Barry Odom hire, certainly is over. I think if Purdue could have beat Minnesota or beat Northwestern, I think it might be a little bit of a different story. But Purdue fans have been through a lot the past 2 years with Ryan Walters and certainly are looking for more, starting to grow a little impatient with Barry Odom. So this would be a big win for him to really kind of set up at least a little bit of a foundation for next year. For keys to victory, I've got 3 here. Kind of already hit on them, but I got to control the ground game, both running it and stopping it. I got to limit the self-inflicted wounds. It's been a kind of the story all year for Purdue. Shooting themselves in the foot. The penalties, turnover, just mental errors. And finally, as we talked about earlier, letting Singleton settle in early, lean in on those short throws, the check down, hit your check downs either to the tight ends or running backs. And I'm sure Purdue is going to build in some QB runs for him because that's kind of his strong suit to kind of help build up his confidence. So those are the 3 keys to victory for me and for my projection. So getting into the predictions here, I'm going to pick Rutgers here. I'm going to take Rutgers and the points. I think Rutgers wins this one by 3. I'm going to go 30-27. So right around that over under 58. I think going to be hard for this Purdue offense. I noticed they've kind of struggled here. It's really going to need this Rutgers defense, although it is bad. Still have to put them in positions where they can't execute their game plan. And I think it's going to be a struggle for Purdue. So I'm going to take Rutgers 30-27 over Purdue on homecoming. And again, I'm just going to need to see Purdue beat peer program like Rutgers. They've had chances against Illinois, if you want to call them a peer program. I had a chance against Minnesota, had a chance against Northwestern, and Purdue's come out or Purdue's hasn't been able to win those games.
I had decided, since we had so much going on with high school football and the Pacer season beginning and the Colts doing so much and IU football, that just leaving out Purdue football this week, if I was going to leave out one, would be the one. Jake said, oh no, we are definitely not going to do that. So he asked me if he could go solo, and of course he can. I think that's going to be a pretty good option from now on. If you like what you hear, please do us a huge favor and share this podcast with a Purdue fan in your life and help spread the word that the Central Indiana Sports Report is here talking about Central Indiana sports every single day. And cannot wait for Boilermaker basketball. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media.